In this video, I want to give a basic overview of how to use a CDN, or a content distribution network. So at the moment we're using Cloudflare for DNS, and Cloudflare is also primarily a CDN. So its main role there is to accelerate page delivery. They actually have quite an extensive network as far as CDNs go. If you go to Cloudflare and then go to the CDN as a feature, you can kind of see their map here and see all of these nodes they have around the planet. These nodes are sometimes called POPs, which I often call them. POPs just means point of presence. You can kind of think of these as servers they have all around the world purely for delivering content. Now, if you want to know how a CDN works, you can frankly just kind of Google that, because there's 6 million images out there that explain how a CDN works. Essentially, they connect in an origin pull fashion, which is the most common, where you actually have content on your server and you kind of have your CDN over the top. And when users request files, it goes via the CDN. The CDN pulls the file directly from your server and then caches it and stores it at one of their edge servers around the world. And then over time, all of those files that are getting requested get cached at all of these different locations, depending on the users requesting them. And the ultimate result is that your sites deliver faster, because users who are trying to load your site, a lot of the files are coming to them from servers that are very, very close to them and are very well connected, versus trying to request everything from your server directly. So if you have a choice whether or not to use a CDN, the answer should always be yes, because it's always, or almost always, going to give a improvement in the actual performance of your campaigns, and in most situations is going to improve the actual performance of your page. The only situation where it doesn't tends to be when the user is very, very close to your server in the first place and the connectivity is good, and the overhead of the CDN might actually add a few milliseconds to things, but this is very uncommon. You're likely to deal with global traffic, so you should have a CDN. Okay, anyway, I'll leave you guys to research things and to figure out how a CDN works. What we're going to do is use Cloudflare directly over our actual Vulture instance we have here. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. Okay, once logged in, I'm going to go to the DNS of my site. And here there's a few things to point out, or there's one main thing I want to point out, and that is this here. So at the moment this icon indicates that the Cloudflare system is acting in a DNS only capacity for these sites. If I was to say click this button, you can see now it says DNS and HTTP proxy, or CDN. So I've kind of turned on caching. So the requests for my site and my server are going through the DNS system of Cloudflare. So Cloudflare's system is kind of controlling the answers and the results that are given to the user. At the moment, all of this is just passing through. But what I want to do is leverage caching, right, to make things faster. So what I want to do is make a new virtual host, which I'll do in Commando, and I want to make a few subdomains and show you guys how to actually use and to test that the CDN is working. So first of all, I'll open Commando and log in. Okay, so what I want to do is deploy a new virtual host. So I'm going to go to recipes and I'm going to find domain, or whatever it was called. I'm going to go use add domain on a single server on the Vulture, and away we go. Okay, so the domain I want to add in this case is going to be CDN what is my site again? xenothewombat.site. Okay. Okay, I'm going to add this and click execute. Perfect. Now I'm going to go into my DNS settings and I'm going to add an A record for CDN.xenothewombat. IP address, it's going to be the same thing, this one. And for the time to live, so with CDNs, the files are going to be cached, right? And if I make changes to the DNS settings and I'm testing things, I kind of want this TTL to be really fast, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is set this to be as long as possible. So this is the CDN, right? For the CDN, we are leveraging caching. So I want this to be have a very long expiry so that I get the highest actual performance benefit. If I put this to 2 minutes, that means almost every single user who was loading my site is going to actually be going through DNS resolution every single time. I'm just going to put this to 1 day and add. What I'm going to do as well is add another record called, I'll just put this in here, get out of here. I'm going to put no CDN, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to leave that on automatic and add. Okay, so I'm kind of running these as 2 separate subdomains for testing. What I'm going to do is put on the actual CDN for that one. I think I might actually change the, okay, it's automatic now, that's kind of been forced. Very well, so that makes sense. Once you turn the CDN on, they force a certain time to live there. That's fine, and they'll probably set time to lives on various things based on their own rules. Cool. Okay, now what I can do is I can test this no CDN URL, right? So I'm going to take this, paste in here, put no CDN, and load. So it loads the test page, which is fine. That's what we kind of expected. And if I do this for CDN as well, now it goes to this page, which is the one that was made when I actually made that virtual host, right? So the CDN virtual host I actually made, so it's now going to this real kind of placeholder, whereas the no CDN one, I haven't made that virtual host, right? So it's just going to the default that Nginx is actually serving. What I want to do is make CDN and no CDN actually point to the exact same place, but I want one of them to be using caching and the other one not. Now this is a situation where we don't currently have a recipe, but you can actually edit your config files for Nginx to make this happen. You don't need to do this, I just kind of wanted to show you this as a proof of concept for how these things work. So what I'm going to do is fire up FileZilla and also mremote-ng. So with FileZilla, what I want to do is connect to my site for FTP. I can see cdn.zeno the wombat in there, and in public, this is where I'm looking at that site I just saw before, the sort of text-based one. What I'm going to do is open the site manager. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to call it vulture test SS or SFTP. And what I want to do is change this to SFTP so I can kind of log in as root. And I'm going to copy that password, paste it in there, away we go, and connect to that as well. Okay, there we go. So now I'm logged in as root. What I'm going to do is go up a folder. This is as high as you can go. I'm going to find the Nginx configuration directory. Again, you don't really need to do this. I just wanted to show it for people who are interested. So I'm going to go to user. It always takes me a while to find these. User, local, Nginx, but I'm doing well so far. conf.d. And there we go. We can see this here. This is the configuration file for the site that I just made for that virtual host. So I'm going to fit things on a page here. There we go. Going to connect to my vulture. There we go, all good. Okay, I'm going to edit this. Okay, and what I want you to look at is this part here. So this property here, or this line, this is the line where we're saying what domains are actually going to point to this virtual host, or what ones, say if I point domain.com at my server and it comes in on port 80, the default for HTTP, Nginx is going to respond and it's going to say, okay, what domain are you looking for? And then it's going to refer to the config files where it knows what domains it is actually serving and what folders they point to. So if you see here, you can see this root here. It's telling us the actual root folder for this domain, which is the one that I'm actually getting when I log in by FTP here. This, I can't tell that I'm in that folder, but that is where I've been sent. I'm kind of locked into that folder. I'm not an admin user in a sense. But what I want to do is add something new here. So I'm going to put no CDN, and I'm going to save that and choose yes, and I can close that. Okay, that's all done. Since I've changed that, that configuration is not live. So if I open this up and I refresh, it's not going to do anything. The Nginx system has not loaded this new configuration. If I want to reload it, I can write in console Nginx, not Nginx, service Nginx, and I could do restart, but I could also do reload just to reload the configuration, which is a little bit softer and causes no downtime. There we go, and it says reloading successful. Now if I refresh this, there we go. Now it's actually serving from that folder. You can see here it says cdn.zenothewombat.site because this it's loading the actual files from within this cdn.zenothewombat site, and obviously this index file actually has that hard-coded into the HTML you can see here. So they're definitely referring to the same place. And if I was to put CDN in here, same thing, right? If I flick between these, spam refresh, it's all the same thing. So now what we've got is we have a no CDN and a CDN going to the same place. One has caching, one does not. Now if I go to no CDN, what I'm going to do is bring up the web developer console. I'm going to, what am I going to do? Pop it out, put it over here. There we go. If I refresh this, I can see the requests for this URL. If I click that, I can see what are called the headers over here. And here it says server Nginx sentmin mod. So it's telling me information about that file that's being served. It's telling me a lot of different things in here. If I then do via CDN, and I'll go to the console and I will clear it and I'll spam it a few times. Click on that. Here you can see the server is now Cloudflare Nginx. So that is being accelerated by Cloudflare, and we can clearly see that in the headers. You'll see all these various things related to Cloudflare in here if you were to inspect them. So if we look at the difference, what have we got? There's various things in here which are slightly different. But it's all by the by. But what I wanted to show is that the headers here clearly show whether it's being accelerated or whether it is not being accelerated. What we can do to test that caching now is edit this index file. So if we edit it, the CDN is going to cache versions of it, and the no CDN version is going to pass through directly to the server. So I'm going to put in blah, 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 and I'm going to save that and close that. Upload. Now if we go back to the no CDN site and I refresh, you can see the title here is blah blah blah. That was probably a terrible actual edit. I want to put that more here. Okay, if I refresh, I'm going to Control F5. There we go, Control F5. So when I was just F5ing normally, the problem there is my browser might be caching the page, or Nginx might be doing some minute caching as well. Either way, force refreshing makes it change. If I now go to CDN, that's what we have. If I refresh, it's now updated as well, right? So let's do another update. And take this, paste this in here, and save. So that's the CDN. If I refresh, spamming F5, if I hit Control F5, there we go, it is updated as well. So in this case, the CDN is actually updating relatively quickly. If I go here, I can't really change this, but what you need to, I guess, understand is that the CDN is going to cache this for a certain amount of time, and it's not going to update as readily as no CDN would. In this case, I think I probably need an image or something better to test to show these changes. So what I'm going to do is delete all of this, because I like to live dangerously, and I'm going to take all of this, since I kind of want some images and things in there, and throw those in. There we go. So I'm going to go back to no CDN and do a force refresh until it works. Everything's caching. Is that updated? It is indeed. This is a point where sometimes your browser gets in the way and you're just kind of like, browser, please. So what I'm going to do is actually open this in a new private browsing window, so I don't have time for that. That one. Paste in here, no CDN. What is this doing? Am I in the right one? I definitely am. Huh? Okay, no, I don't want to reopen the local file there. Yep, definitely. Caching is always fun. So in cases like this, I'm always just like, oh, what is going on? But never fret, there's always an obvious explanation. In this case, for example, if I refresh, there it goes. So in the console, actually, if you check your settings, there's in here you have, where is disable cache. You can turn that on for the web developer tools in Firefox, so that whenever you have them open, it kind of purges caching and things. So there we go. That is what we wanted. If we now open CDN, there you go. If we open the web developer console and we hit refresh again, we can check and see that this is served by Cloudflare. And if we go to no CDN, we can see that it's served by, where have we got? Nginx. Okay, perfect. Now what I'm going to do is check how the caching works for our server. So again, I'll have to confirm exactly what settings we have sorted, but Nginx is actually very good at static asset delivery and caching itself. So chances are our server actually has some caching on things as well, just to improve performance. But again, I'll have to check. So what I'm going to do is change some of this content. What do we do? I'm going to just duplicate that. I'm going to refresh the no CDN. I suppose one of the problems here is that I'm refreshing the same site from the same server with two different URLs or domains, and I might actually be, changing the caching here for the CDN one as well, at kind of the browser level, if that makes sense. So if I refresh, you can see that nothing really changes, but when I'm pressing F5, I don't know whether my browser is caching things. So if I open the console and then hit F5, you can see this changed because of this setting in here. So this setting is really your friend for testing things. Now if I open CDN and I hit Control F5, there we go. Now if I open this file again, and what shall I do? Save that. Now if I console, hit F5, you can see that updates pretty quickly as well. It's giving me an unknown error here because I'm spamming, and when you are uploading or updating a file, sometimes if you're like spamming refresh around when that's happening, you can kind of break things for a second. If I hit Control F5, that doesn't fix it. What I would do here is two things. First of all, try the other domain. There we go. It works if you're going direct. If you try via this again, it's not happy. What I would usually do here is edit this, because it might have broken it when I was trying to request it during the actual file update. So I'm just going to hit save again. And there we go. Then I'll try and refresh. Boom, fixed. See, there's always a reason for all these little things, especially when you're trying to test things and you're being quite aggressive. So showing the caching here isn't working very well, which is kind of annoying. But for the purposes of demonstration, I just kind of wanted to show you how you could actually test these things. Here, it's quite clear that Cloudflare is updating the site very quickly, rather than caching everything for a long amount of time. In any case, interesting nuances and so on aside about CDNs and the way that they kind of work, which can often be a little bit puzzling, especially when you're just recording things on the fly without actually doing much elaborate testing beforehand. Let's have a look at the actual impact that that can have. So I'm going to close this. What I'm going to do is open our cdn.zeno, the wombat site, index. You can see there that's cached. If I request a new URL, it's going to update, most certainly. There's various things with CDNs as well, like whether or not they honor query strings, so whether or not this is different to this, or this, or this, the same file with a different query string. That's something you can figure out and research yourself afterward. Often it's an actual setting. If we go to CDN here and go to speed perhaps, here we have all these options. Okay, I don't even want to get into this just yet. Let's go back to overview and then analytics. What do we have here? There we go, we have some analytics about what's going on. Can't do really accurate ones because I'm not paying for things. That's fine. What I want to do is look at the actual speed of this page. So I'm going to look for pingdom free page tester, tools.pingdom.com. This is something which I'll talk about in a later module as well. What I'm going to do is do the no CDN, and I'm going to test it from, so where is the server? It's in Singapore? Tokyo. I'm going to test this from far away. I'm going to use Dallas and then just start the test. So what I'm going to do here is basically request this site and have a look at the performance data for Pingdom when it's requesting that, which will take a little bit of time, usually pretty quick. There we go, 1.67 seconds, 350 kilobytes, that's quite a lot. But no, we don't really care about this page, right? We don't care whether it's that fast or slow. This picture was missing for whatever reason. I'll have to look into that. Modal gloss.png. Obviously just probably missing from the zip or from the folder, so I'll fix that. And everything else looks fine. If we look here at this actual waterfall, we can see the speed at which these all loaded. What I'm going to do is actually open a few of these, and I'm going to test them twice to have a look at how caching might be impacting things. So I'll do it from Dallas again. And what I want to see is without the CDN in there, is my Nginx server kind of caching things and increasing the, or is there some sort of speed increase after the first serve, or is Pingdom caching anything? Usually they won't. For page speed tests, they don't want to do that at all. So this was 1.67 seconds. This is almost exactly the same. If we scroll down to the waterfall, what did that do? Oh, I started a refresh by pressing, or a retest by pressing space. My bad. If we scroll down to here, scroll down to there. Okay, you can see the speed was relatively similar. The main difference is this pink bar, right? So what is that? That is the DNS time for resolution, and there it's almost zero. So hopefully you all know exactly why that has happened, because Pingdom has cached, or their ISP or something along the route has cached the actual DNS resolution for my server, which is great. That's what we want. Now what I'm going to do is do the CDN. Again from Dallas. I'll let one test go, and then I'll start another one in a moment. Okay, so same size, the load speed a little bit slower, kind of within the same actual ballpark. If we go down here, what do we see? The DNS times are kind of absent from the beginning. This is for various reasons. Any DNS and SSL and negotiation times with the CDN are going to be very, very low, because the server that they're initiating contact with is an edge server, which is very, very close to the user. So the connectivity times, the network times before they actually start receiving files are generally very, very fast. So if we were to compare these, what do we see? So it's clear that the largest component with the CDN is the yellow, which is waiting. So that's some sort of operation happening, which is the origin pull. That's the CDN pulling things from our server, which is clearly taking a little while. But what happens if we do it again? And again, and again, and again. So I'll just copy that, paste that in here, and do it again, and again. Here we go. Look, now we're down to 600 milliseconds, so about a third of what it was before. If we go down here, we can see there's a wait time for the index of about 380 milliseconds. It was originally about that as well. With our direct, there's a little less wait, but a much larger connect time. And then look at these file loads. They are much, much faster. This one here, it's coming from Google. Like, don't even worry about these ones. They're all external. But if you look at these ones, for example, which are coming from our server, 4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 13 milliseconds versus 410, 404, 390, 300, 300, 300. This header BG, which is the background image, took about 800 milliseconds to download from the server directly. Via the CDN the first time, it took 1.2 seconds, and now it is taking 36 milliseconds. Now what are we getting? 590, 590, 624. So after one request, it is all now caching. We're requesting from the same place. Everything is fast. So you can basically sort by URL here, I guess, and you can see that almost everything is a lot faster. The initial request of the page is the slowest thing. It's actually it figuring out which page to get and our end server actually responding. Otherwise, everything has got a lot faster. And if I go back to no CDN, it is going to be dead yet. It is going to go back to what it was. And the other thing I can test is whether or not a query string actually affects things. So let's do v equals 2. If we go back to the site, we're back to 1.5 seconds. You can see this relatively consistent load speed. If we put v in 2 here, it's the same. So you can see here it's not actually causing any changes. We put stuff in here, get out of here, and something equals this, and try again. This probably won't make a difference. So it didn't really do a huge amount. If we go down here, it's all pretty much the same. Just that this 404 here is causing some indiscriminate amount of time. So clearly with Cloudflare at the moment, these query strings are not making this the CDN consider that as a different page. Let's go back here to the various settings here. What's crypto? This is for SSL and things. We don't really care too much about this. Will SSL work? That's a very good question. It won't work on the no CDN. We don't have an SSL certificate set up. So that's not even loading, right? Why is that not even loading? There's a very simple explanation. If we use SSL, we're actually using port 443, which you can get if you just kind of do this. Oh, no, that's a terrible example. If we go to CDN here and we view and edit that, you can see here listen 80, right? It'll be, where is it? That is the default. So we're only listening on port 80. We're not actually responding to SSL and secure pages. So of course it's not going to work. But what about with CDN? That actually works. The reason that works is because Cloudflare is actually providing the SSL certificate, and that certificate is coming from the edge server that they are using. It is actually very expensive with most CDNs to use SSL because you have to upload your own certificate to all of their edge servers. So the fact that Cloudflare actually provides this shared certificate for people is actually quite an advantage. And if you click here, you can see the information on where it comes from, Komodo CA. More information, you can basically see whatever that's coming from Cloudflare directly. What else do we want to do? Authenticated origin pools, that will make it so that it forces it to use secure like SSL or TLS when it pulls from our server. We don't want that because that's going to break it. It's not going to work. What have we got on firewall? You can set security levels. So Cloudflare kind of acts to mitigate DDoSes and attacks and so on as well. And you can set various rules with Cloudflare, like blocking people's IPs, doing various things. You may need to upgrade your plans to do that, and so on. So Cloudflare is actually a very, very cool system in this respect. One thing I do want to mention is just do not try and use this over your tracker. So if I was using a tracker on the same server as my landers, what I'm probably going to do is add a new virtual host called track.whatever, pointing to my IP, add that, and then in Commando add that as a virtual host. Let's do that right now actually, because we'll be doing a tracker installation later. I'm going to do track.xeno-the-wombat.site. Going to add that. All done. So I would add this in here. Add that. For the TTL, I would just keep it automatic. You definitely don't want caching, DNS only. We can put it on for the root though, or the Apex, and that's fine. So you want this to be on a completely separate virtual host to your actual landers if you're using the same actual server, and you want there to definitely be no caching. Just do not put this on, because it is going to often cause problems for any tracker. Because they're dynamic, they do not want anything to cache. They do their own internal caching in various ways. Don't try to interfere with that. Now if I go to speed, there's all these various things that you can do here. We can actually check these and see what they do. So let's keep this here open. Let us open this page ourselves, and we'll open the browser console so that it's not caching anything. Hit F5. There we go. What we can do here is view the page source, and you can see what it looks like. Now let's turn on this stuff, this minification. Now this says purge cache to have your changes take effect immediately. So purging the cache is the manual operation where we tell all of the edge servers to purge their content and actually just request new content from the origin. Rocket Loader, I would be careful with this when you're using JavaScript. It can cause issues, so I wouldn't recommend turning that on just yet. How do we purge the cache? Maybe we go to caching. There we go. We don't want to purge individual files. Purge everything. Away we go. So please allow up to 30 seconds. That's fine. Look here, we have the query string caching as well. Determine how much of your website's static content you want Cloudflare to cache. We can ignore query strings or do no query strings. So if we put no query strings, I think that is going to make it so that having the query strings actually changes the page. If you're passing information to your lander that you want to use in it, but that information is not going to change the page delivered, then you definitely want to ignore the query strings. Otherwise, you're going to lose all the benefits from caching, because every single visit to the landing page has unique query string data in the URL. So, what is this? Determine the length of time Cloudflare instructs a visitor's browser to cache files. So that's kind of a header you can set. So if I click, one of these files, for example, I can look at the response headers that come from Cloudflare, and you can probably see the cache control here. It's saying, what is that? That's 3 days, I suppose, or something like that. So you can probably change this for various reasons. I would put this on just a month. That is fine. It doesn't really matter too much. Always online is where it caches your actual system so that pages can be reached even if your server goes down. This is probably not going to help you if your landers and your tracker are on the same server, and so on. This is for turning everything off in order to bypass things for testing, but I would rather do that at the DNS level so that you kind of know what's going on. Cloudflare will treat files with the same query strings as the same file in cache regardless of the order. So that's kind of like the order in which you have the query strings, like A equals this and B equals that and C equals something else. If you had it in another order with B equals and C equals and A equals, it would treat them the same. That is definitely something you would want if you were using query strings, because their order is really irrelevant to any systems and programmatic systems, but you're not going to upgrade to Enterprise Plan just to get that. Okay, so that's purged. What I'm going to do is refresh this. Note that nothing has really changed because I didn't change anything. If I view the page source, what can I see? I can see that nothing has changed. I'm going to do a force refresh and then try again. Okay, so not a lot has changed here. What I'm trying to look for is whether or not it's doing minification of the actual page. If I go here, where are we going? Speed. Okay, reduce the file size. So basically I wanted to minify all these things, right? So I'm kind of looking for that. I might turn on automatic here and just hope that all of this actually applies. I'm going to purge everything again. I'm going to put no query string. I'm not quite sure whether, I think no query string is what I want. Browser cache expiration, let's put this to something really low actually, and I'm going to turn that off. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just kind of refresh this a few times. Open my web dev console, refresh, have a look at one of these headers, that one there. Is there anything different that I can notice? Not really, it all kind of looks the same. What I want to do is view the page source again, nothing has changed. What I'm going to do is open this in a new private browser window. Try again. Okay, so I'm not seeing any minification, which is kind of annoying, so I'll leave it to you guys to actually test that. What I'm going to do is test the CDN page here again. So usually what happens is this kind of minifies the entire page, crams all the output together, but perhaps it's just taking a while to apply. I don't know, it's clearly just not doing it as fast as I want. One thing with testing CDNs obviously is the fact that they cache things kind of can work against you when you're trying to test things very quickly. What do we see here? All the same. Okay. Right, what have we got? 2 seconds. Wait, did I turn that mode on? Let me get back to this development mode. No, I didn't turn that on. Okay, that was lucky. If I had turned that on, that would explain why nothing was actually changing. Okay, let's test this again. Back to being cached, which is great. That's what I want. Oh, I'm just looking at these JavaScript files and realizing they're all minified already, so it's not really going to affect those too much. But what I was looking for is whether or not this HTML here would actually minify. It doesn't seem to be doing that just yet, but it's something that you can try and figure out later. Now with the query strings, now with these new settings, this should actually be a different page or treated as a different page. So if I put this in here and test that, as long as these settings here are doing what I think, where they ignore query strings, again, you don't really want to do that if you're using landers that have query string data being passed, then it shouldn't cache that. It looks like it still is. Get out here. I'll try from a different server. No, I won't. That won't help. Start again. I'm going to open help here. That would have been helpful. You can set Cloudflare CDN to cache static content. Only delivers files from cache when there is no query string. Okay, so that would mean that putting in an actual query string overrides things. Ignore delivers the same resource independent, or standard delivers a different resource each time the query string changes. Oh, okay, that's kind of what I wanted. So in your case, you actually want ignore query string for your landers because you're wanting to serve the same HTML file every single time. If you're using landers that are using PHP, then you're not going to cache those in general, and you probably need to figure out in the system somewhere how to exclude those actual files, so PHP files completely from actually being cached. You can cache all the images and the JavaScript, but not a PHP extension file. I'm going to put this back to standard because that is exactly what I actually wanted. Try testing this again, see what happens. Let's go to page rules. Okay, so here we can create a page rule. We can create 3 in our plan. So by using the asterisk, you can create dynamic patterns. So I'm just going to do .php. And then for .php, what do we want to do? Cache level, disable performance, and so on. We don't want to do anything. We want to bypass. We can probably do other things as well. Disable performance. So we probably don't want any acceleration and so on a PHP file. And what else? Rocket loader, email obfuscation, and so on and so on. Edge cache, time to live. We're bypassing, so we're probably not going to be caching anything at all. always online, browser cache TTL. What else can we do? Let's turn off Rocket Loader, for example. So if we save and deploy that, I should reference the domain in some way. Okay, so we'll do Xeno the wombat.site / and then anything.php. Bam. Disable performance may not be used with Rocket Loader. Okay, that obviously turns off Rocket Loader. There we go. So that would be kind of the rule we add for PHP pages on our server so that they don't get cached. What have we got going on here? That's still caching. It still is. So I'm just going to kind of ignore these results for the moment because it's just taking up too much time to test them. Ultimately, you can kind of trust these settings, but you should test them yourself anyway. What else have we got? Network. Speedy, that's fine. Enable IPv6, sure. WebSockets, you don't really need these, but you can turn that on. IP geolocation, this is if you want to pass this through. So you must retrieve the IP geolocation header for this. So if you want to do that, you can actually edit your Nginx config files, not these ones, but the core Nginx to actually pass that through. And to do that, you can just Google, no, not that. You can copy this and Google that. And it will tell you how to actually pass this stuff through in any case. So Nginx can, not Nginx, Cloudflare can actually pass through the IP geolocation information of people directly to your server, because this is information that your server can't necessarily see, because now it's an edge server from Cloudflare which is doing the request, not the user directly. And so this is kind of one way to actually push those through. Same here with the true client IP header. Again, you need a better plan for that though. Again, you wouldn't put this over your tracker, so it probably wouldn't matter too much. Okay, I think that's everything. I've gone over quite a lot, waffled about quite a few things, and tried various tests, some which worked fine, some which did not. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I would definitely recommend sticking to Cloudflare for the moment because it is kind of the easiest to set up as a newbie or just in general, and it has very good DNS, application firewall and security features, and the caching and the performance is actually very, very good and easy to customize. Okay, that's all for a basic overview of a CDN and how to use it. I'll let you get set up with these on your landers, test a few things, run some speed tests on your landers, and figure out that things are actually working in the way that you want them to. If you have any issues with caching and so on, just talk to us and the tech support and we'll help you figure things out. Okay, that's all for this. I'll see you in the next video.